want to be in the business of using local food. It's smart. Your customers want it. But you've got to figure out how to design your business to be able to make it work.
You have to change with the market, and the market is going up in terms of how much food costs. And if we want to pay our farmers a living wage, then we're going to have to pay more for the food that we buy.
So I think that we're in a crisis. Less than 2% of the population in the United States are farmers. I think the average age for farmers in the United States is about 60 years old. I think there are a lot of young people that want to be farmers, that want to be fishers. There is a future in farming and fishing in this country.
Having consumers interested in and able and willing to support small-scale agriculture is a really essential part of this puzzle.
I wish I could educate the consumer about how a restaurant works, because the margins are so far apart between like how much you gross and how much you actually profit. And so it's pretty clear when someone is complaining about like how high a price is. I'm gonna be really nice to them, but it's kind of like, oh man, if only you knew. If I have to pay more money for something that is locally sourced and, you know, pesticide free and healthy for you, then I will, because it's important for me as a chef to serve better ingredients. And as the consumer, you need to be ready to pay whatever amount people are charging for it.
You know, the restaurant business is a tough business, just like being a farmer is a tough business. The margins are very slim. There's a lot of pressure today on labor because we've got such low unemployment levels that finding qualified people and being able to pay them is pushing us. So a lot of small operators struggle to keep those food costs in line. And when you start to work with local food, you have to recognize the need for the farmer to be able to make their business viable as well.
It feels really unfair. And when I see, you know, farmers that I know here that are tight, you know, making it but tight, it makes me really angry about, you know, how something so important and so basic as farming, and probably one of the most necessary things. We need food, we need farming, we need fishing. The pressures are just incredibly unfair.
I think one of the big things maybe that's of interest here is the ways in which stratification among scales of farmers has led to small-scale farmers being really disadvantaged, right? And the ways in which small-scale agriculture may not be able to be as economically viable because of the great benefits that are received by large-scale agriculture. Larger scale operations are in a better position to be able to adopt new technologies, and because of that they're able to be more competitive and have prices that are more competitive, and that really disadvantages than farmers that aren't as able to adopt those technologies, maybe farmers that choose not to.
If we want to pay our farmers a living wage, we have to pay more for the vegetables that they take care of and they pick.
Well, you see things like restaurants developing a continual relationship with given growers, and on their menu they have a story that goes with that grower, and so the consumer that comes into the restaurant buys that particular dish. They're getting not just a meal, they're getting a story about the local farmer, and they know where that food came from. Farmers in all areas of agriculture, you know, they're part of what we often talk about as a perfect competitive market. They have limited ability to affect their price, and I think the ability to develop new markets, new channels. You know, we saw things like community supported agriculture, the CSAs.
One of the keys to our financial success has been our CSA program, our Community Supported Agriculture Program. We are really, really well supported by a set of households and families in our community who support us from season to season, and we're their personal farmers. The program provides us with the working capital that we need to start out the season, helps us plan accordingly.
Yeah, it's good. And we know sort of how much money we're going to have to work with. We know that if we can grow the stuff, we have it sold already. So we have that kind of security. We don't have to take a lot of weird risks as a result. And yeah, cuts down on our losses a lot having a subscription program with the veggies.
Yeah, that combined with diversifying to local farmers markets and having a few other outlets keeps things vibrant and keeps us going. And it's really helped us build our business as we got started.
We see an increase in the use of direct markets like farmers markets, community-supported agriculture. There are other innovations arising. I think one thing that's been gaining more support and steam are food hubs. So the idea of creating ways to ease the work for farmers by having centralized locations where farmers can distribute their food, maybe process food, and it also might ease the work for consumers.
The role that institutions play is leveraging the purchasing power that they have. In the case of the University of Washington, for example, the students are asking for a shift of 25% of their food purchases to real food by 2020. That, in the case of the UW, is $5 million. And so if the students win this campaign, that means that they're getting the university to commit $5 million to spend on local community-based, very ecologically sound or humane food. A $30,000 contract for a farmer means a lot. They can make a big impact with just one contract for lettuce, for example.
When you think of financial management, you think of just records, and it is important to have a balance sheet, know where you are on that in terms of your equity and your loans. And that maybe once a year is good, and same with profitability. It's important. If it's going to be sustainable, it has to be profitable. Most important thing, I think, is to focus on the cash flow. That is really where you're vulnerable, that liquidity issue of being able to pay your bills in a timely manner without disrupting the flow of the farm. I think maybe the best way to do that really is this new USDA program, the Whole Farm Revenue Protection, because you know there's a floor for your cash in revenue. Could be they're guaranteed up to 85% of that. And if a farmer thinks about what would happen if they didn't get that market or that production, whatever the reason is, they didn't get the revenue, they're very vulnerable to failure. That's the number one greatest reason for farm failure is lack of working capital.
So in essence, they're trading off, cutting off the dips in cash flow and profits for a slightly lower profit at the peaks, because of course every year you're going to be paying the premium for that insurance.
Premium, yeah, but of course that premium is really, and the farmers that I've talked to, it's just not really an issue. It's about 1% of their revenue. It's insignificant.
The quickest way to be broke is to rely on high prices, high yields, and expect that, okay, I can go buy a $395,000 combine and I'm going to be able to pay it because I've been getting $16 a bushel. Well, you might still be getting $16 a bushel, but if your yield has dropped from a 30 bushel average to 10, you're not going to make that payment. You better have a CRC coverage, crop revenue coverage. Do your analysis, do your paperwork, and if you need a 70% coverage to give you a guaranteed floor so that you can make all of your payments if some disaster happens, that's how you make your decision what coverage level to keep.
The producers of big time commodities, that the wheat and barley, and they have specific policies that are available to cover just that crop. But typically, small farms that are producing organic produce, they have a variety of many different commodities that they produce. A lot of those don't have a product available to cover individual commodities or individual crops. So this whole farm revenue protection sort of takes care of those kind of producers that can't find a regular crop insurance policy.
think it's particularly interesting when farmers can work together with folks that are doing organizing work. So that's a little bit different, right? That organizing means that we are pushing against the structures or the structural barriers preventing us from getting more real food into institutions. So Real Food Challenge is doing a lot of that work in higher education, and it's basically policy work, organizing work. So that means breaking through the maximum allowance that is currently, institutions currently allow themselves to purchase in terms of real food.
So often what we do is we put the problem solving onto the people that are experiencing inequality, right? And so we have these broader issues that are related to social, economic, and environmental well-being, and rather than holding everybody accountable, we often focus on individual and think about how the individual should be working to make their own experience better. This reminds us that we need to make calls for broader policy change if we want to see shifts happen in terms of the economic benefits that small-scale and middle-scale agriculture provide.
For us, we came into farming out of a love for food and how it can bring people together. It brought us together. And it was the way that we really like to spend our time. And so the fact that we get to connect with a group of eaters, whether it's here at the farm stand where people are picking up their shares or at a farmer's market directly every week, that's really something I think that sets us apart. You can be a lot of different types of farmer in this world, and for us, having that direct contact with our customer base on a very regular basis is really, that's what we're about. It's not negotiable for us to be missing that piece. And so I think that the best we can do to do right by those groups of people is really what's going to help us continue to grow for a long time.